There were 56 chairs set out for the funeral. 56. I counted them while everyone else cried like grief was a duty they'd rehearsed. Karina had insisted on the silver-trimmed folding ones because they photographed better, because of course she did. But only 55 were filled. The one beside her, the one that should have been mine, stayed empty. She'd told the usher not to seat me there. She said it would make things complicated. Complicated? Like mourning your father while secretly texting your attorney about divorce filings isn't already complicated? I stood at the back, not beside her, not with family, not even among the distant cousins. I stood next to a faux ficus tree and a woman who once dated her uncle in the 90s. I held a funeral program that misspelled my last name. Nobody offered me a tissue. Nobody asked if I was okay. And when Karina rose to speak about her father, Glenn Darby, oil titan, the man who once told me I smelled like drywall, she didn't mention me. Not once. Not in the list of survivors, not in the thank yous, not even a sideways glance. She wore black silk and heels sharp enough to puncture egos. She cried perfectly, enough to seem human, not enough to smudge mascara. When she returned to her seat, she leaned in and whispered something to the man sitting where I should have been. He laughed. I don't know who he was. I don't care. Because what happened after the service, that's where the story actually begins. It wasn't the inheritance, not yet. It was what Karina did on the way out. She dropped her handkerchief deliberately right in front of me. I bent to pick it up like an idiot, like muscle memory still thought I belonged to her. And that's when I saw it. The folded corner of a document inside her clutch. Crisp. Official. Hungry. I saw my name in bold, next to a case number. And in that second, something brutal clicked into place. She had filed for divorce before the funeral, before the flowers, before the eulogy, before she cried over a man who hated me while pretending she still loved me. 2 days later, she would inherit $250 million. 2 days after that, she would walk into our house, hand me a plain white envelope, and say, "Wendell, I'm choosing myself." But the will, the will had other plans. Plans Karina didn't see coming. Plans that made her turn pale in a room full of mahogany and legal threats. Plans that for the first time in years made me matter. I didn't sleep the night before the reading. Not a minute. I lay on the pull-out couch in my cousin's basement, listening to pipes clank and hum, wondering if I should even show up. What would be the point? Karina had already taken everything, not just the marriage, but the dignity I once had standing beside her. When a woman leaves you before the flowers on her father's grave even wilt, you stop expecting fairness from the world. But that document, that single flash of bold text with my name on it, it nagged at me like a hangnail you can't stop picking. Why would Glenn Darby, a man who referred to me as the lawn ornament, include me in anything? The estate sat on a private hill in Hampton Chase, surrounded by wrought iron gates and whispers, the kind of place where even the breeze smells expensive. I wasn't invited through the front like the others. I was directed to a side door, the one reserved for caterers and service staff, probably poetic in Glenn's eyes. A small group gathered in the study, deep leather chairs, animal heads on the walls, and a grandfather clock that had probably ticked through 3 world wars. Karina was already there, legs crossed, slate gray, not black, mourning period complete. She looked at me, not with anger, not even with pity, just vacant, transactional calm, like I was someone she used to lease a car with. And beside her, sat the same man from the funeral. I noticed his shoes first. Polished loafers with little gold tags. Nobody wears shoes like that unless they expect to be stared at. I took the far corner where the light didn't quite reach. Nobody greeted me, not even the lawyer, who shuffled a thick manila envelope like it contained nuclear codes. He cleared his throat. As the legal representative of the late Mr. Glenn Darby, I will now read his final instructions, witnessed, notarized, and recorded 2 months before his passing. 2 months. That hit me like a brick. Glenn had updated the will recently, very recently, before the heart attack, after the last family retreat. I remembered Karina going on that trip alone. "You'd be bored anyway," she told me, tossing sunscreen into her suitcase. At the time, I believed her. Now, I wasn't so sure. The lawyer listed assets, properties in Rhode Island, an apartment in Paris, 3 vehicles worth more than my childhood home, art pieces by names I couldn't pronounce. Each line felt like someone else's fantasy life. Then came distribution. To my daughter, Karina Elise Darby, she tilted her head slightly, like a queen awaiting her crown. I leave the sum of $1 million to be managed by the family trust. Karina blinked once, just once. The lawyer didn't flinch. She cleared her throat. "Did you mean 100 million? The room went silent, the kind that thickens the air. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "No, 1 million. The remainder of Mr. Darby's estate will be transferred to another beneficiary, as outlined in this letter." He opened a sealed envelope, hand addressed. He pulled out a single page and began to read. Glenn's voice echoed from the paper. "If you're hearing this, Karina, I'm likely gone. I've watched you change, not over years, but in weeks. You stopped visiting unless there was a camera involved. You brought that man, the one you thought I didn't notice, into my home and laughed behind my back. I am not a fool. You loved your inheritance more than your father, and so my money will not be your reward." Karina's mouth opened slightly. No sound came out, not even a gasp. The lawyer continued, voice flat, merciless. "To the man who married my daughter, despite knowing she would one day despise him. To the man who tolerated my cruelty with dignity and who stayed even when he should have left, Wendell Thomas Carr, I leave the remainder of my estate. I swear time broke in that moment. My lungs forgot how to breathe." Karina stared at me like I'd grown antlers. The man beside her stood up as if the chair had suddenly become dangerous. "I didn't want this. I wanted my marriage. I wanted my cat. I wanted my Sunday mornings back. But none of that mattered, because I was now the legal heir to a $250 million empire, and the woman who left me was staring at the floor like it had betrayed her too. I left the room before they finished the paperwork. I needed air. I needed distance. I needed to scream and laugh and vomit all at once. She ran after me. I heard her heels scrape the marble faster than I'd seen her move in years. "Wendell," she called, but I kept walking, down the driveway, past the fountain, through the gates. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being left behind. I walked for over an hour that day, not because I didn't have a ride, not because I was trying to be dramatic, but because if I stopped moving, I felt like I might explode. Even the trees lining that estate road looked like they were leaning in, whispering things behind my back. I didn't want the money. I wanted a time machine. I wanted to go back 6 months and shake myself until I noticed every sign I'd ignored. Before Karina started disappearing into her phone, before she started wearing new perfume, before she started saying things like, "You wouldn't understand the world I come from." When I finally made it back to my cousin's place, I sat on the edge of the pull-out couch, still wearing the same wrinkled shirt from the reading, staring at a plastic plant in the corner. My cousin's kid was watching some cartoon where animals flew planes. I could barely hear it. All I could hear was Glenn's phrase in my head, "To the man who stayed even when he should have left." I hadn't even known he'd seen me, the real me. And now he was gone. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was fear. I wasn't built for this. I didn't know what to do with money that had more zeros than I had ever seen. My whole life had been coupons, bulk ramen, and budgeting gas to make it through the week. I didn't even know how to talk to lawyers. Karina did. The very next morning, she was waiting in front of the depot where I worked. Yes, I still showed up. What else was I going to do? She leaned against the hood of her BMW like she hadn't shattered my heart and walked out on me. The look in her eyes wasn't sorrow, it wasn't even desperation. It was hunger, strategic, polished hunger. "We need to talk," she said, pushing her sunglasses up into her hair like she was in some courtroom drama. "No, we really don't," I replied, brushing past her, but she followed me right into the building, right past my supervisor. She cornered me near the break room, standing so close I could smell the same vanilla lotion she used when we were still sharing a bed. For a moment, I almost forgot everything. I almost remembered what it felt like to wake up next to her and think I wanted something. And then she said it. "You don't deserve this, Wendell." No apology, no guilt, just that. I stared at her, honestly stunned she even had the nerve. She blinked like I was the unreasonable one. "You think this is your money?" she continued, lowering her voice. "This wasn't supposed to happen. He was punishing me, that's all. He always knew how to twist things. You're just a symbol, Wendell. This isn't about you." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how else to stop my hands from shaking. "A symbol?" I asked. "So I'm not even a real person to you?" She crossed her arms. "You were a mistake that lasted too long." That line, I still hear it in my bones, a mistake that lasted too long. Before I could say anything, she reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. Legal papers, highlighted sections, post-it notes sticking out like angry yellow teeth. "This is a revised proposal," she said, "for division of estate asset. You don't need all of it. You don't know what to do with it. You'll lose it. Let's be realistic. You'll get eaten alive." "Is that a threat?" "It's an offer," she said smoothly. "A chance for you to walk away with dignity before you embarrass both of us." She smiled then, the same smile she used to give store clerks when she wanted them to waive the return policy. I didn't take the folder. I couldn't. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, not from anger. I wasn't raised to hit or shout, but from shame, because a part of me believed her. A part of me thought, "She's right, I don't belong in that world." But another part, quieter, shakier, said, "Maybe I do. Maybe Glenn saw something in me that Karina never did. Maybe staying even when I felt invisible meant something more than weakness." She turned to leave, heels clicking with confidence, folder still in hand. "You'll call me," she said over her shoulder. "You always do." But this time I didn't, because this time I had something I'd never had before: leverage. By the end of that week, everything about my life felt fake. I was still clocking in at the depot, still eating off-brand cereal in a borrowed basement, still getting texts from Karina, pretending like she was doing me a favor. She didn't beg. Karina never begged. She negotiated. "Let's be smart about this. We can avoid dragging it out. Think of the media. The media, as if the world gave a damn about a guy who once fixed his neighbor's dryer in exchange for leftover barbecue. But someone must have been watching. By Friday, I got a call from one of Glenn's estate attorneys, not the guy from the will reading, but a younger voice, tense and uneasy. He asked if I could come in to review supplemental documents. I said I didn't understand. He hesitated. It concerns the structure of the inheritance. You'll want to read this yourself. The office was in a glass building downtown, the kind of place I used to pass on my way to dollar lunch specials, always assuming I didn't belong inside. The receptionist didn't even look up. I sat on a leather couch that cost more than my first car, sweating through my shirt, trying not to touch anything. When I got into the conference room, they handed me a sealed folder and stepped out, giving me privacy. I opened it slowly. My name was on the first page in bold. I skimmed the legal jargon until I reached the section labeled Addendum, Conditions of Inheritance, and that's when I realized Glenn wasn't just bitter, he was brilliant. Nearly 40% of the estate had been placed in a time-locked trust under my name. But here was the twist. That portion wouldn't activate unless I remained divorced from Karina for at least 18 consecutive months. If I re-entered a relationship with her, married or not, I would forfeit that entire portion to a wildlife sanctuary for abandoned dogs. I read the paragraph 3 times. Each time, the air felt thinner. Glenn had designed a clause that punished me if I ever took her back. It wasn't just money, it was a trap, a loyalty test from beyond the grave. And attached to the final page was a scanned, handwritten note. Wendell, if you're tempted to return to the cage, remember you were never the pet. She only knew how to feed you. Don't let her leash you again. GD. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt sick because Karina hadn't come back for love. She'd come back to defuse the bomb her father planted. And now the clock was ticking. That night, I didn't answer her call. The next morning, I found her sitting in front of my cousin's house again. Same car, same coat, but this time no folder. Just her, red-eyed, hair messy, looking almost human. I just want to talk, she said. You always do. She looked down at her hands, then back up. You've read the documents, haven't you? I didn't reply. Her jaw tightened. It's humiliating, Wendell. What he did to me, to us. That clause? It's a joke. It's disgusting. He's laughing at us from the grave. Are you sure he's not just laughing at you? I said, before I meant to. The words came out colder than I expected. She blinked, the first crack in the armor. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. But I laughed, sharp and tired. Didn't mean to. Karina, you had the divorce filed before his ashes cooled. She swallowed hard. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, I said. And the man in the blue loafers? The one you whispered to at the funeral? Who is he? Her face tightened, and for a second I saw it. Not guilt, not grief, calculation. She reached into her coat and pulled out an old photograph, one of our early days. A picnic by the lake, plastic wine glasses, her head on my chest. She held it between 2 fingers like it was evidence. I keep this with me, she said. You weren't just a stepping stone. I didn't take the photo. I left it on the porch after she drove away. That night, I looked up the sanctuary named in the clause. Over 300 rescued dogs. One of them was named Captain Pickles. If I took her back, Captain Pickles got my money. I never wanted a symbol of my self-worth to be a pug with a lazy eye. But somehow, In that moment, I understood everything. Karina wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to disarm the trap, and she wasn't done playing. Neither was I. The photo stayed on the porch for 2 days. It rained the first night. Soft drizzle, just enough to warp the edges and blur my jawline. You'd think I would have brought it inside, but I didn't. Not because I was trying to make a point, because touching it felt like touching a lie that used to be warm. Monday morning, it was still there, clinging to the wood, corners curling like it had aged 20 years overnight. I picked it up not because I wanted it, but because I needed a reminder, not of what we had, of what she had already decided to trade away. You'd think this is where things cooled down, where Karina cut her losses and vanished into whatever marble-floored life she thought she deserved, but you'd be wrong. Karina was never the type to lose quietly, especially not to someone like me. 3 days later, I got an envelope in the mail. No stamp, just left in the box. My name printed in red ink on the front, bold, dramatic, theatrical, like someone trying too hard to seem mysterious. Inside, a single sheet of paper, no letterhead, no explanation, just 2 sentences. There are things you don't know, Wendell. Be careful who you trust with Glenn's secrets. No signature. At first I thought it was a prank. Then I thought it was Karina, trying to rattle me. But the more I stared at it, the more I realized it wasn't her tone. Karina didn't warn. She demanded. That night, I sat up and went through every folder, email, document the lawyer had given me. I hadn't touched most of it. I'd been overwhelmed by the sheer volume of financial jargon. But now I dug in, and I found something, not on official letterhead, not buried in legal language, but tucked in the back of a sealed envelope labeled miscellaneous correspondence. Inside were printed emails from Glenn's private server. Most were nothing. Notes to his assistant, instructions for staff. But one thread caught my attention. Subject line, Karina's request. My stomach tightened. The email was short, sterile. We've reviewed the request. Destruction would require written sign-off from all trustees per the original agreement. At this time, only one signature has been received. We will not proceed without the second. Document destruction. Trustees. The timestamp was 2 weeks before Glenn's death. I opened the earlier message in the chain and felt my breath catch. Karina had requested the the destruction, of a file called Addendum C, Disqualification Clause. It didn't take a law degree to understand what that meant. She knew. She had known about the clause before he died. She'd tried to erase it before it could trap her. I printed the emails and called Glenn's attorney the next morning. When I told him what I'd found, there was a pause. Not long, just long enough to tell me he hadn't expected me to find it. Mr. Carr, he said carefully, those documents were reviewed after Mr. Darby's passing. The clause was deemed valid. As you know, no alterations to the will were executed after his final notarized revision. So she tried to get it removed, I said, almost to myself. Yes, but legally, nothing changed. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Karina hadn't just left me. She'd known about the clause and everything she'd done since the funeral. The photo, the soft voice, the visits, the talk. It wasn't reconciliation. It was damage control. That night, I got another voicemail from her. She didn't know I'd found the emails yet, but her voice was tighter now. Controlled, but thinner. She was losing ground, and she knew it. Wendell, please, I know this has been ugly, but you and I both know he did this to hurt me. You're just a placeholder. I'm the one who had to live under his rules my whole life. I deserve a piece of it. You can't actually want to punish me like this. I listened to it twice. Then I saved it. Not because I needed proof, because I wanted to remember exactly who she was when she thought no one was listening. But what Karina didn't realize, and what Glenn probably hoped I'd figure out, was that there was more than just emails. There were videos, security footage, archive locks, time-stamped visits to the estate, and one file dated 3 days before he died. Library, July 10th. I didn't even know the estate had a library. Apparently, that's where the final twist was waiting. And Karina had no idea I was about to find it. It took nearly a week of calls, paperwork, and clearance from the estate manager before they let me onto the property again. I expected someone to stop me at the gate and say they'd changed their mind, that I'd been mistaken, that the money wasn't mine after all. But the guards recognized me now, not as Karina's husband, not as the broken guy who fixed radiators. Now, I was Mr. Carr, sole beneficiary, and suddenly doors opened. The library was on the second floor of the West Wing, a place I'd never been allowed. Karina always said it was off limits. Private archives, she'd tell me, family history you wouldn't understand. Now I understood everything. It wasn't about books, it was about control. Tucked between leather-bound first editions and a globe that probably hadn't spun in 50 years was a drawer behind a false panel. I didn't find it alone. An older staff member, Horace, guided me there. He didn't say much, just handed me a brass key and said he wanted you to see it. Inside the drawer was a single flash drive in a velvet-lined box. Labeled in Glenn's handwriting, Library and July 10th, final record. It felt heavier than it should have, like it wasn't plastic and metal, like it was loaded. I watched it alone in the estate study, with the curtains pulled and the doors locked. The file was under 5 minutes long. No music, no effects, just raw footage from a fixed-angle security camera above the fireplace. It showed Karina, not crying, not mourning, not even alone. She was pacing, agitated, phone clutched in one hand, the other gesturing wildly. Glenn was seated behind the desk, motionless, watching her. His expression wasn't sad, it was exhausted. I leaned in. "You have no right to do this," Karina snapped. Glenn didn't respond. "You want to die with a smile on your face, knowing you've taken everything from me?" Still no answer. She stepped closer, voice rising. "You hate me so much, you'd rather give your empire to a man who unclogged your toilet." Glenn finally moved. Not much, just leaned forward. "You made your choice," he said, voice cold. Karina froze. "You left him before I was even gone." "So what?" she hissed. "You were already halfway in the grave." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "And yet I lived long enough to rewrite the will." For the first time, her face twisted into something close to panic. Glenn went on, slower. "You thought you could outsmart me, have your freedom, keep the fortune, erase the consequences. But Karina, there are consequences. This isn't about love," she spat. "No," Glenn said, "it's about protection. I'm protecting my legacy from you." And then, the line that hit me like a punch. "You always thought love was leverage. But Wendell never asked me for anything, never took a dime, never insulted me, even when I tried to push him away." Karina backed up a step, fury tangled with confusion. The video ended, black screen, my own reflection faint in the glare. It wasn't satisfying. It hurt, because deep down, I'd still hoped she might care, that some piece of her, even a tiny one, had loved me once. but the way she spoke about me like I was an embarrassing accident. She hadn't lost me. She'd discarded me. And now the only thing she wanted was the thing her father left me. I sat there longer than I can explain, staring at the black screen, waiting for the part where reality makes sense again. It didn't. It never does. I thought that was the end of it, the final twist, the final humiliation. Glenn's voice from the grave slamming the door on Karina's carefully curated life. But then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Tucked behind the legal documents, behind the emails and property deeds, a medical report. A sealed envelope marked "Private, to be read after death." My fingers shook around the edges like the damn thing might bite. I'm not good with mysteries. I'm the kind of guy who Googles spoilers halfway through a movie just to ease the tension. But this wasn't a movie. This was Glenn's initials on a wax seal. I opened it. Inside, one page, handwritten in careful block letters. Glenn's penmanship looked sharp, almost mechanical, like every word had been measured twice. "If this reaches you, Wendell, I am dead, and you've chosen not to give in to Karina. Good. You always had more spine than she gave you credit for. I'm not writing this as a confession. I'm writing it because I believe, deep down, I won't die by nature's hand alone. I know my daughter. I know what she's capable of when she's desperate. I have no proof, just instinct. I was healthy before the retreat. My doctors confirmed it. But after the weekend she visited, something changed. Chest pains, dizzy spells. She offered me a new tea she said was part of a cleanse. I never drank it again after I threw up the first night. What kind of father suspects his own daughter of trying to finish the inheritance early? But Wendell, if you're reading this and I didn't go peacefully, promise me one thing. Don't let her walk away untouched. GD. I set the paper down and stared at the desk grain like it might rearrange itself into a lie I could live with. It wasn't an accusation. Not legally, not officially, just a suspicion, a whisper, but it froze my blood. Because suddenly everything clicked. Karina's hunger, her panic, her timing, her obsession with the clause, the way she showed up like a politician in a crisis, not like a woman who missed her husband. I went back to Horace. "Do you have access logs?" I asked. He hesitated. Then I showed him the letter. His expression hardened. He nodded once. We pulled up the archives for the weekend Glenn mentioned. Karina had entered the kitchen 6 times, the guest room twice, the library once, and Glenn's private quarters. 7 entries. 7. All between midnight and 4 a.m. I looked at Horace. "Do guests usually have access to that space?" "Never," he said flatly, "unless invited." And that was the thing. I knew Glenn. He didn't invite Karina into his room at midnight, not 7 times. It still wasn't proof. Not enough for police, not enough for criminal court, but it was enough for me. Enough to understand her fear wasn't about losing money. It was about me discovering why the money arrived so fast. So I called her. She picked up on the first ring, breathless, like she'd been staring at the phone for hours. "Wendell, I found the footage," I said. "The library and the letter." Silence. I let it stretch. Then, softly, she said, "You're not supposed to have that." "No," I replied, "just like you weren't supposed to be in his room 7 times after midnight." Her inhale was sharp. "You don't know what you're saying." I kept my voice steady. "I know exactly what I'm saying. And so do you." Another pause. Then, carefully, with that twisted calm she used when cornered, she asked the first honest question she'd asked me in years. "What do you want?" And I realized something. Karina didn't believe in guilt. She believed in leverage, so I gave her none. "I want nothing from you," I said, "and I'm going to give you nothing back. No money, no silence, no protection. You're going to spend the next year wondering if I'll go to the police. You'll keep your hair perfect and your smile polished, but you'll always flinch when the doorbell rings." Her voice cracked. For real this time. "Wendell," I hung up. I'd never felt stronger in my entire life, and I wasn't done. Because Glenn hadn't just given me an inheritance, he'd given me a sword. I didn't go to the police right away. I took my time. I moved carefully. I let Karina think I was bluffing. I let her panic quietly in her glass condo with her wine and her spreadsheets. And while she watched the phone like a grenade with a twitchy pin, I started building a case. I hired Glenn's own private investigator, a man who'd worked for the Darby family for years. Turns out, he already had suspicions about Karina. He compiled notes, dates, pharmacy receipts, financial transfers. There was a trail, faint but undeniable, showing Karina had purchased certain compounds from a boutique wellness shop known for cleansing powders. The same ones Glenn had consumed, and then suddenly stopped. Once we turned it over to the estate attorneys, the machine came to life. Quietly, quickly. Karina was served with formal accusations: attempted tampering with a trust, destruction of protected legal documents, will interference. It didn't go to criminal court. We weren't trying to convict her, but it did go to civil court. And in that courtroom, the full weight of Glenn Darby's empire crushed whatever hope Karina had left. The clause held. She walked in thinking she could challenge it. She walked out with nothing, not a dime. The judge honored the structure of the trust, the addendum, the footage, even Glenn's handwritten statement. Karina's remaining stake was frozen and legally redirected, not to me, but to a series of charities Glenn had named as alternates in case of moral compromise within the family. She appealed twice. Both times, the court sided with the evidence, with the old man's voice from the grave, with the broken husband who stayed quiet long enough. And me, I didn't run out and buy a yacht. I didn't move to Paris. I didn't hire a chef. I moved into a modest place near a lake upstate. I adopted 2 senior rescue dogs from Captain Pickle's sanctuary, and I started volunteering there once a week. Funny how one clause written out of spite turned into the only peaceful place I've ever known. People ask me if I'm angry, if I still miss her. And the truth? I don't miss the lies. I don't miss the weight of her contempt. But sometimes I miss who I thought she was. That version of Karina I used to imagine still loved me somewhere beneath all the ambition. But missing a ghost isn't the same as wanting it back. Not long ago, I got a letter. Handwritten, messy, no return address. One sentence inside: "You ruined everything." I didn't keep it. I let the dogs chew it up. Because she's wrong. I didn't ruin everything. I saved what was left of me, and that was worth far more than $250 million. The end.